Und jetzt kann er kommen. Applaus für Harrisson von Open Source Publishing.
Hello. Good morning. Yeah, my name is Harrisson. I'm coming from Brussels, and I'm part of open source publishing. I was part of, I don't know if I'm part anymore, anyway. But first, I wanted to thank the school and the graphic design section, especially the organization of the festival, and the volunteers who performed a lot those days, and all the students who are really kind and helpful here. Okay. There are many questions to get, there are many ways to get answers to the question of is it better to restrict yourself or to allow everything? And according to me, restrictions are always here, and choosing to emphasize aspects in a creative process is a political question. I'm invited as an open source publishing member, and our case, which is a study case, could be a good answer to it. Anyway, the question that we set was, would it be possible to run a graphic design studio working only with open source softwares and open licenses? And the creation itself of the collective, which we call the caravan, in fact, maybe explain why we came here and how we did it as well. So what I will show you this morning is more like my story leading to OSP and what it is now, rather than a kind of what we did and everything. Yeah, nothing was really planned. Everything came through the process, and it's all about graphic design, allowance, restriction, life, and it's a bit like Italo Calvino's Castle of Crossed Destinies. It's like putting cards on a table, and then a story appears. So, early development. I'm talking for myself. As a graphic designer, there are things I discovered in the profession that I thought weren't possible. I did some scientific studies, I learned history in the university, and everything I was doing was coming from a pre-existent knowledge. And I went to Belgium to study graphic design, and at the third year, I discovered things that I could be what I was doing. I was designing posters at the time, and it became really a passion. And I melted into graphics, into life, into parties, into drugs, into graffitis, into all kinds of things. And everything was coherent. Everything was related to signs and to types and this kind of things. And with this light string, which is the choice of one vocation, such as graphic design, could be something else. You can read architecture, you can read lettering, you can read all the world, you know, this building and everything. So I was immediately hired by trendy studios and worked underpaid, but I didn't care because money was dirty at the time. I was involved quite deeply with clubs, with squats, and in experimental music labels. I worked with everybody who would ask me to do something, I would do something. But in order to work with people I wanted, I had also to adapt my situation. I wanted to work for a high cultural level institutions, but they're generally, well, in Belgium, with really low budget. So I specialize in kind of high-class, low-budget printings, working with cheap printers, with old printers generally, with limited resources. And for example, I would print a poster that would be a flyer, that would be flyers, that would be a whole program, and so on. So this is a poster I did for Festival Jonction from Constant, which is a kind of it's institution for new medias and new technologies, and who is a kind of our godfathers. And this is the poster, and this is the verso of the poster, and this is once folded, it's a program, and as you can see here, every page can be a flyer, independent flyer for the whole event. And just to get the idea, it was printed with a varnish, not a Pantone, but a varnish, and the black was printed on top of it. So when they folded the program, the ink, I asked that the ink wouldn't dry, and it would stamp like one page into on the opposite page if there was varnish. And so in this kind of tricks, I became kind of a specialist. This is the poster for a festival for electronic music that occurred in Brussels in 2002. And it's out of the bedroom. It's 3 evenings with loads of concert, performance, and talks. And the poster was designed to be cut as well as different flyers. And each flyer would have a main theme on it, and cut it, and then play kind of puzzle game in the city. Actually, it was 12 flyers, and each one gets specific information about mixing, DJs, talk, readings, architectures, video, VHS, printing stuff, cassettes even. This is a kind of local thing. It's a poster taken from a record cover I did for a band, a French band, and it's kind of an artificial map of France with Mulhouse instead of Paris, and like it was Record of the Month on The Wire magazine a few months ago. It was very pleasant to play with the kind of old French taboos. And again, I'm quite involved with map. My mother is a geographer, so I really like the texture and the meanings of mapping. And this is another poster for an electronic festival. And this can be cutted in 15 different flyers that would be also the CD covers for specific release of the gigs that we're doing during the festivals. With each sleeve, 12 by 12, would have a different part of the map. For this, I designed a font called Atlas, inspired by Marcel Broutard's work of the Atlas for the use for artists and soldiers. And I get involved in many cultural institutions in Brussels. So it's images for festivals and these kind of things, theaters, clubs. This economical construction was very fragile and depending on a blurry statue of the right of the artistic works. And half of what I built were rights to use my work. And taxes on this amount were low because they were under kind of property statute. But state decided that it should be professional, so I had to pay 12,000 euros for the last 5 years of activities, which of course I hadn't. So I became a kind of study case for lawyers fighting for an artistic statue in Belgium. We went to court. The fight lasted 5 years. If we would won, other like me could have escaped, but we lost. And it broke quite a lot. Career, health, life, you know, it's kind of passionate thing. So having been totally broken by taxes and kind of arbitrary interpretation of the law, I decided to slightly change my position. I would work to get unemployed money from the unemployment, and then live from the money from the state, which would allow me to have full time to work for a cultural institution with no budget. So this was kind of an exhausting run, and it took a year and a half to earn the 32,000 euros needed to get the artist statues, which is a kind of specific statue in Belgium. But then I earned 1,000 euro a month, and then I could work cheaply for dance content and low-budget associations, such as Constant, for example. This one was the first symposium about copyright laws and the act of copying. And this is the map of a kind of interpretation of the future of the world, involving all the people that were talking and presenting movies and showing books during the festival. And yeah, this is another festival, kind of always the idea of everything is related to everything. So also organized by Constant, this association for new media. And as I was getting time as well, I wanted to study again. So I went back to, I applied and I entered at the Jan van Eyck Academy in Maastricht for a post-academic research. And I started research on the future of the book. And I was among a team. Then it became a bit chaotic again. I lived in Liège, which is known as Tox City, and it was a lot of drugs. I was involved with graffiti crews, had kind of hidden depression, and I had like really long discussions with media activists, and had very, bad fights with advising researchers of the Jan van Eyck Academy. And I stated that the freedom of edition, means the freedom of speech, could only be assumed if the tools used were free as well. So in this year, 2006, Adobe Corporation acquired Macromedia and get a total monopoly on graphic software industry. And they are still the only one in the market. And then it rose the question, how can you set the capital to Marx capital, using InDesign, or writing freedom of speech with restrained copyright font, and how to be, at the end, consistent with design. So after 15 years of rebel, punk attitude and pirate attitude of working with cracked proprietary softwares, I realized that it was reinforcing the system I was fighting against. So placing you in an out-of-the-law situation, Adobe got all power on you, of course. So you can't be subversive anymore. Any independent publishing movement gets slightly cynical as well. So at this moment, Femke Snelting, a theoricalist of media and feminist activist, helped me a lot. And a lot of questions appears from the discussions, how to avoid cultural segregations via technologies. So we discovered that being legalist and honest was a subversive attitude at the time. We wanted to use tools that would assure the freedom of the content, and for that it should be non-proprietary. So open source philosophy was offering the freedom of code with a legislation that allows the copy to stay free as well. So this is Richard Stallman, 4 rules for open source software. So it means it's kind of, it's like Asimov Robert's law, you know. You can't, once you're in, it's kind of a game, a mind game. You have to leave, you can take free works, but you can't close them. It has to stay open. You have to distribute them. And would it be possible to apply those rules in another process than softwares, because those laws were made for softwares? Could we apply that into graphic design? And then the designer is no more the ally of capitalism, to answer to Paul Elliman's question. So we decided to create this study case. What if we do graphic design studio only working with open source softwares and open licenses? And how would apply those rules in the whole design process? And would be economically viable as well. So we created open source publishing. It's a blog. And we did this first post. It's time now, with death coming in the printer shop. Through time, OSC policy model is such that it integrates personal luggage of people joining us. We are heterogeneous, and each of us get a different ambition. Most of us are completely burnt by life, wrecked by systems, often fighting against prejudice and dominant culture, and we all get a different cultural background. It used to be an association of losers, renegades, and wounded people. We were all in crisis against graphic design, into graphic design. So we define ourselves as a caravan. We collaborate, we travel, we are heterogeneous, and we are always redefining ourselves. We're mostly in this position in the street. Surprisingly, this potential was not well seen by the graphic design world. And I have to say, we started straight with the typographic world, one of the most conservative you can imagine. Tradition, secret, monastic life, quest of good, beautiful, and right, crystal goblet, this kind of bullshit. So we came with collaborative work, copy-based, non-proprietary work. We are just mashing a bit of tradition. We were stating that typography and the use of type was highly political. It was also seen as style by some graphic designers, and some were very interested in form we could get using strange softwares, but they were quickly afraid by the free aspect of the work. Moreover, we were not just users anymore. We had to get involved with the programmers, putting hands in guts, working with software developers and programs, and most of all, getting into licenses and being legalist. It's a kind of different discipline to get. Some have seen it arrogant, some have seen it naive, some have seen it as a coquetry. But we found the way to get away from the grid. So this is kind of poster we did. Another map done for Centre Georges Pompidou, Beaubourg, Bibliothèque Publique d'Information, for a documentary festival called Cinéma du Réel. And we were asked to do a non-linear program, like to have the program of the whole festival with all the titles of the 360 different documentaries, but not related in a linear form, such as a book, but that could be related one to another depending on its geographical position. And we were straightforwardly confronted to the graphic rules of the Centre Pompidou, which has been designed by Rudy Bauer. And it's the use of, we could only use one font, which is the FFDIN, but as it is a proprietary font, we couldn't work with it. So we had to redesign one, and it's the 1932 cut of the DIN, and that we released open freely. So we used that, and while using that at the picture comes from Chris Marker La Jetée, and the idea of the open font, and they were like, oh, super good. And they stole, they copied, they didn't stole, sorry. We gave them copies of the font, and they installed it in the computers of the Centre Georges Pompidou. So for the moment, there is a kind of fight between two fonts, the the ruled font of Rudy Bauer's straight commands on how to deal graphic design with the public, and personal computers with, oh, this font is nice, okay, I use it, and it's kind of internal, like it spreads a bit everywhere. It's kind of nice. And this is it, it's reality. Reality is what you bump against, as says Chris Marker. So it was fun, but it was also exhausting. Getting strange PDFs that printers would refuse to print, dealing with RGB and CYMK algorithm, working with software that wouldn't work or crash all the time. Fortunately, it improved and get better, and more people joined. It was really fun. Yeah, this is another font we did called Notre Courrier Sans, and it's a version of Courrier without serif, taken from an open Courrier that states in every computer in GoScript. GoScript is a program that allows you to do some PS files, and URW in 1987 gave a set of fonts, including Courrier, a specific version of Courrier for the use of this software. This software is open source, so the font has had to be free as well. So we used that to do a kind of brutal version of Courrier without serif. We released that. We did that in collaboration, like several of us. We released it. And the next week, we received an email coming from Ukraine of a type designer saying, okay, I found your font, and I added the Cyrillic glyphs, and then within 2 weeks, the font had double size, and now I know there are versions that are developed like in Copt in every single languages. So this seed, this kind of font seed, which is like with the openness of intervening inside is kind of growing for the moment, and ever, and it will be always growing. So this is one of the use. It's a cover for a book we did, Floss Art, the use of free license and open source software, and related to art. And we worked specifically on fonts on this. This book is 26 different texts. And we worked with an open source font called Linux Libertine. And we did 26 versions of it called Libertinage. And on each text, one letter would change. So on the 26 texts, it's 26 fonts. The first one, the A changes. The second text, the B changes, and on and on and on. And there is, okay, we can't see that really well, unfortunately, but here is the version with just the I think it's a T changed, and here it's like all the letters changed. Should have done like high resolution. Okay, the cover is not very nice, but it was automatically generated. And yeah, this is the kind of work also we did with this book. It's about new media institution in Belgium, and we received those. On the right, you got like the scheme of what the website is, with all the relation, really well ordered. Everything is well organized. And on the left, you got our version with like all what are the real relations between the letter between the pages on the website. So it's like completely messy and everything. So we're showing like the guts of people we're working with, which gives a lot of freedom, gives a lot of air, even for them. So we won a prize, not Fernand Baudin, the Plantin Moretus Prize in Belgium, the best book of the year. We are really proud. And we organized also print parties, meaning it's like meetings in clubs where we meet a kind of public, people interested in, and we teach them how to produce books or posters or anything. This is the manual for a book. using open source software. So you get also the knowledge of how it works. It's not just something you have to learn. It's also taught. And yeah, we did all kind of posters. This is for Mediatek, you know, where you can rent CDs and videos, and of course this kind of institution is only working by copying, you know. Mediatek thinks people are interested by music, but people are just taking the CDs and rip them at home. So we wanted to change also the idea of copying is learning, and the ecstasy of copying things, and that Mediatek would assume this statue of being a center for copy. And we did some political posters against anti-terrorism and this kind of ruled pressure on states, on its citizens. The control is everywhere. And this is open source publishing next generation, NG. It's like the people that are involved now. Third line, yes, me. I went into teaching. I'm currently teaching in 2 schools in Belgium with really bad paid as assistant because there is no more room for teachers, for real teachers. As an assistant with low salary, high motivations. And I started to get the students involved also with collaborative works and real life assignments. For example, it's a poster for a party. And my OSP practice melted into practice of teaching. This is a poster also we did for a festival about radios. And this is what we did yesterday here, the workshop, which was very nice. I want to thank the students that came. It was very nice. And voilà, third life. Alors, on 15th of October 2010, I was diagnosticated a myelodysplasia Arab type 1. In short term, it's blood cancer. It's leukemia. So it can only be cured by extremely violent treatment, a bone marrow transplant, with a series of chemotherapy and radiotherapy. 15 years ago, it was not curable. I was fortunately compatible for a transplant with my only brother, you saw. And I stopped teaching and doing graphics. I had to be killed, and I had to be born again. I was cured 50% by technology, 50% by magics. I've been through pain, through the latest drugs available, through shamanistic experiences with Christina and Gabriela. I went to some of the furthest points of the Occidental world, organ transplant, aseptic isolation. I lived what it is to be 75 years old. I lived what it is to be a pregnant woman. So what kind of graphics can I do now? It would be maybe interesting to continue. I am now something else. With marrow transplant, I have my brother's blood. Mine is dead. Medicine had to go into mythology to find words to define me. I'm a chimeria. In heterogeneity, I am one. So I'm now beginning something new, which is no more black or white, and which is a kind of fusion of things. It's kind of a specificity through universality. I have to change all my habits. I have to rest a lot. I have to sleep a lot. I have to avoid stress at all costs. It is the opposite of graphic designer. I don't have money anymore. I can't get a loan in bank. I can't work as intensively as I used to do. Materially, I'm poor, but spiritually, I'm really rich for the moment. It is now my life that I have really to design, and not just pieces on paper or politics with involving everything. It's kind of strange movement. And I don't know what it will get to, but the story starts again with other kind of rules, if we're talking about that. And to quote poète Paul Valéry, trouver n'est rien, le difficile est de s'ajouter ce qu'on trouve. meaning finding is nothing. The difficulty is to add in yourself the things you find. So I'm open for anything. So what I am currently working on, the image you see is a part of a series that would be the future decoration of aseptic isolation rooms where immunodepressed people have to stay minimum 5 weeks and or several months between life and death. Together with Dr. Poiret from St. Lucas Hospital, we got a deal with the European Space Agency to get high-resolution satellite pictures. And the idea came from watching the movie Out of the Present, from Andrzej Ujika, who is a teacher from here. This is also one of why I came here as well. And I watched that when I was there. So what kind of image can you watch during 5 weeks when you're between life and death? It's kind of interesting topics. And I've also started a new master course at ERG, École de Recherche Graphique in Brussels, in Master Communication, which is science fiction and graphic design, the representation of the unknown. So to finish it, I would like to quote designer Enzo Mari, saying, "We've got too much chairs and tables. Look through the window. What is missing?" Thank you very much.